Okay, got it. Okay, so today is our book brewers meeting, and we're supposed to have 3 book reviewers. Pipit with the book 21 Lessons for 21st Century, and Donald with Human by Tom Phillips. And the last but not the least is Gusti with Mayan, Perjuangan dan Mimpi Gadis Kecil Miskin di Pedalaman untuk Meraih Pendidikan by Sani Kunchoro. So for everyone, you have 10 minutes to do the book review and 5 minutes for questions and answer. And when you share your book review, please make sure you talk about the authors, the background, the reason why he or she is writing this, and everything about the author. And the second one is please share a short synopsis of the book so we have an idea what the book is all about. And next, what you enjoy from the book and what you disagree with the author, because sometimes author is very opinionated, but you can have disagreement with the author's perspective and it's okay. It makes the discussion rich actually. And the last one is the wisdom or the golden nuggets that you take from the book and you apply in your daily life. So, who would like to start first? Because I know people is still looking for a place to sit down, to turn on the computer, to order a cup of coffee, or to chit chat with the customers there. So maybe Donald, could you please start with Humans by Tom Phillips?
Okay, thank you for the time. Good afternoon. So I would like to share the book. The title is Humans by Tom Phillips. And actually, the author almost never wrote anything about himself. So I had to look up in the book page about the author because he didn't write anything
about what? Sorry?
Anything about himself. I mean, about the author himself.
Okay.
So he is a journalist, Tom Phillips, in the UK, and also a humor writer. So this book is actually a blend between history and humor. He writes history, some historical stories in a humorous way. And yeah, and he is a journalist in editor, I think, in BuzzFeed UK. And the second part, a short synopsis. But I think before that, I would like to share why I choose to read this book. So I chose to read this book because the topic is history, and it is something I'm very interested in. But usually, the book that I read before is history, mostly on the positive side. So, for example, with *Sapiens*, usually about the achievements that the civilization achieved throughout history. So we achieve agriculture, and then the revolution, scientific revolution, and so on. I got interested to read this book because this book took the other side. It doesn't talk about the achievements, but talk about the mistakes and the flaws that people throughout history made. So that's why I was interested to read this book, because it is like the flip side. Usually I just read only about the good stories, about the achievements, but not about the mistakes. So because of that, there are many stories in this book that I've never read before, despite having read quite a lot of books on history, but there are many stories in this book that I've never read before, again, because this book took a different perspective, not the positive side, but the negative side. A short synopsis of the book is that, yeah, actually the book only talk about the mistakes that people make throughout history in different areas, in democracy, in autocracy, in science, so on, and the lessons from those mistakes. But I think the most interesting part of the book. So I think I will move directly to number 3. What you enjoy from the book? The most interesting part of the book is the stories. There are many stories in the book about the flaws. Some of them I already, one or two I already knew. For example, the people in the Easter Island. I read about it first in the book Collapse by Jerry Diamond. The people in the Easter Island, they kept cutting the trees down until there were no more trees. And they erected these giant statues as a symbol of status. But then at the end of the day, they forgot about the trees. They ended up having no tree, and the island got deserted because there is no natural resources. But other stories from the book, there are still many more. Like for example, the last king, the third king of Egypt, is actually like to steal things. For example, I just knew that. And also the example is the policy from Mao. The policy had good intention, that is to eradicate pests during the Cultural Revolution. Actually, before the Cultural Revolution, we wanted to revolutionize the farming in China, but it had an unintended consequence, and that is because they eradicate sparrow. The sparrow actually ate locusts, and because of that, the locusts got multiplied in numbers, and the harvest failed, and ended up in a famine. Millions of people died. So that's an example. So that's what I enjoy from the book. Then what you disagree with the author. I'm not sure about what to disagree. Oh, one more thing before that. So about the future threats that the author talked about, the future threats for humanity, that the future mistakes that we could make. The first one is climate change that you mentioned. The second one is AI. So we could delegate too many decisions to AI, and that will be a mistake. And then the next one is nuclear war, I think. Yeah. So those are some possible future mistakes that humanity could make. So back to number 4. What you disagree with the author? Well, I don't really have something that I disagree with. Yeah, so this is always the difficulty for me in reading, because I usually just took the positive side. I don't take time to. I usually just skip the part that I don't like and forget that. So yeah, I don't remember anything that I disagree with from the book. And lastly, wisdom from the book, number 5.
Even climate change, because I remember you said you don't really think climate change is, that dangerous or something.
Yeah, I agree with climate change, but about the urgency, that's a different matter. The author doesn't talk about the emergency rate. But I agree with climate change. Just about the urgency, maybe the other things are more urgent, like AI and nuclear war are more urgent. Oh, one more thing that he mentioned, possible future mistake, is antibiotic. That is interesting to me. So he said that just like people in the Easter Island, they cut down trees without realizing that it was a finite supply, and they didn't have time to replenish the trees, and they ended up losing this natural resource. Similarly, today, we use antibiotic excessively, and as a result, there is this growing resistance from the bacteria to antibiotic, and there is a danger that soon we will run out of antibiotics. That is very interesting to me. So antibiotic, nuclear war, climate change, AI. Number 5, wisdom from the book. So the book talk about our tendency to make decisions using shortcuts, or the term is actually heuristics. Heuristic is a way for us to make decision quickly, because we have so many things around us, right? So we have to find a way to make decisions quickly. This is called heuristic. Actually, there is another book that deeper into this. The book is Influence by Robert Cialdini. That is a very good book about all these heuristics. But this book is about how throughout history, with this kind of heuristic, people make mistakes. So that is the wisdom from this book, is that we need to be careful not to follow our first inclination or natural instinct. We need to think about the consequences. There is another book. I think this one is the title.
Predictably irrational.
Sorry?
Predictably irrational.
Oh, no. It is by Ray Dalio, the book that we read the beginning of the Brewer's Principles. He called it first degree and second degree consequences. So we need to think about those. Right, so the wisdom is we need to be not to be overconfident, because people tend to be overconfident. So actually many examples in the book is about overconfidence. So these rulers, they are overconfident about themselves and make mistakes. So we should not be overconfident, and we need to take time to think through before making a decision, especially if it affects many people. So that's the wisdom from the book. Again, because it talks about the negative side of history, not the positive side. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald, for sharing your book review with the rest of us. So we have Gusti here. Welcome, Gusti. Maybe you missed some of what Donald shared in the beginning. Donald actually was talking about humans. That is the book titled, written by Tom Phillips. Tom Phillips is an author, a journalist, and the book is about human history, but from the negative points of view. So Tom loves talking about the mistakes that people have done. And also Tom loves predicting the mistakes that we all human beings are going to make in the future. And for example, he says that the future mistakes that humans are making is climate change. By cutting down a lot of trees, we don't think about the impact on our climate. The utilization of AI, artificial intelligence, the nuclear war that we are having at the moment, and also the utilization of antibiotics, so humans become resistant to antibiotics. And I think you heard about heuristic method of decision making, etc. So that was excellent. And any questions from Gusti or from Pipit for Donald?
Hello?
Yeah, Pipit.
Okay. So it's a very interesting book, and I think I really need to read it because I'm also a negative person. So I feel like this book is is in the same frequency like my frequency. I like talking about human failures and what we can learn from them. Now, my question is, of all of those big mistakes, which one do you think was the biggest one? I think, or at least what the author thinks was the biggest mistake that humans ever made, and what's the lesson from it?
Is it a human or civilization in the history?
Or civilization in history, probably. I don't know what's the scope of this book.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Pipit. So actually, the most memorable story for me, and the author mentioned it as the biggest diplomatic failure ever in history, is from an empire, and I never heard the name of this empire. And the author said, "You never heard of the name of the empire, right?" Well, there is a reason for that. So the name of the empire is quite complicated. Squarsummer or something empire in the Middle East in the 13th century. So the emperor actually, sorry.
No, sorry.
Yeah, Pipit's voice is a bit unclear.
I think Pipit is saying, please repeat the name of the empire.
Yeah, okay. I will find it because the name of the empire is forgotten.
He forgot, Pipit. So is that okay with you?
I will put it on the chat. Yeah, I got it. Wait. Because it's difficult to Khwarezmian Empire. So that's the name. So the Shah, the emperor or the king is called the Shah in the Middle East. Got a letter from Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan already conquered China at the time, and Genghis Khan was thinking it's time to enjoy peace and to have rest. So he sent a note asking the Shah for trading relationship. So he wanted to have peaceful relationship with this Shah, to have good trading relationship, but there was no positive response. But still, Genghis Khan took positively. Okay, so no positive response from the Shah, but I will send my envoy anyway. I will send my trading caravans anyway. So he sent caravans, and the governor in the border captured all the caravans and kill all the traders and loot everything. So the governor of under the Shah just captured all the caravans and robbed everything. And the author said, surprisingly, the Genghis Khan still want to give a second chance. So if you look at Genghis Khan, usually our image is very brutal, right? But surprisingly, this time Genghis Khan want to give a second chance, so he sent another letter to the Shah asking for
Did
punishment.
they explain why?
Sorry?
Did they explain why suddenly he wants to give that?
I think that's because Genghis Khan at this time actually want to have maybe like retirement or something after conquering China, the Song Dynasty. So it's quite a fit, and he wanted to have peace. So he sent envoy sending letters, asking punishment to the governor. So giving second chance. But what happened is that these envoys were humiliated by the Shah and sent back to Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan, the story said, the author said, Genghis Khan go to the mountain and he prayed for 3 days and 3 nights and never knew this. This is the mountain that Genghis Khan always went to before deciding to engage in war. So he went to the mountain and prayed. That's the word that is used by the author. Prayed for 3 days on the mountain, and after he went down, he sent another letter. This time he said, "Be ready, I will come to you." So he prepared the troop, and long story short, in just 3 years, the entire empire is gone. In just 3 years. That's why I never heard about this empire, because in just 3 years after Genghis Khan decided to attack, the empire is no more. So, and after this, Genghis Khan, the author said maybe because he was surprised how easy it was to conquer the empire, he decided not to take rest, but to continue conquering until Europe. So it was a turning point. He wanted to take rest, maybe have peaceful retirement, but then because of this Shah, the opposite happens. So that's the biggest failure, I think, the book. Yeah, then answer a bit.
Is that answering your question, Pipit? I think Pipit is still. Pipit, your connection is bad, so you're like breaking up.
Could you repeat again, Pipit? What did you say?
How about now? How about now?
Yeah, better. We can hear you.
Okay, so it can be a good and bad thing then if it in the end it makes Genghis Khan decided to conquer Europe. So this mistake can be good and bad thing then, not total like a mistake.
This is from the point of view of the Shah. So it was the biggest diplomatic failure from the point of view of the Shah.
So the lesson is don't give second chance.
The lesson is, if you are the leader of the empire, you should respect your neighbor. And at least if you do not want to respect your neighbor, you need to gather intelligence to know for sure who you are facing, right? This is Genghis Khan you are dealing with.
Yeah, don't don't be too careless when it comes to
Another lesson is do not be another lesson is do not be overconfident. Just because you are having this empire under you doesn't mean you are the strongest in the world. You need to know who you are dealing with.
It's like kakak di bawah tempurung gitu. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is about the overconfidence theory of a leader, because you need to know who Genghis Khan is. He's very powerful, but the Khwarezmian emperor, he didn't think that Genghis Khan would attack him and attack the entire Europe. So that's a good lesson. Don't, what do you call that? Don't attack the strongest in the world. It's just like Ukraine and Russia war. When Zelensky decided to have a war with Putin. And we can see now it's never ending war. So good. We can learn from the history. Thank you, Donald. And Donald, how long is the book, by the way?
Not so long, about 280 or 300, about around that.
Ha ha ha. And how long did it take for? Sorry. Donald, how long did it take for you to read the whole book?
Maybe 2 weeks, because I read slowly.
That's very good, in 2 weeks. And you said about Tom Phillips, right? He's a journalist in UK. Yeah, I think it's common for journalists when they write books after they work, because I remember Blink by, I forgot what's his name, Malcolm Gladwell, and also the other books that Malcolm Gladwell writes. And Malcolm Gladwell is also a journalist. So I think this journalist likes researching, contemplating, and put them, interviewing people also, and put everything together in their books. Okay, thank you very much for sharing. And Gusti, are you sure you don't have any questions? Okay, you're so quiet. Okay. All right, now let's go to the second book by, it's up to you. Pipit or Gusti, which one wants to go first?
Mbak Pipit first, coba.
I can go first.
Okay.
With the Plato Republic.
Oh, so you're not reading 21 lessons from 21st
The
century?
second one.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna share Plato's book, which is The Republic. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pipit.
Okay, thank you so much. So the book, I don't have it with me right now, but I have it on my note. I actually read this book in April when I was in Fukuoka International School. For that time, I was waiting for my students to compete, so I dropped by at their library and then check out the display, and this book was on the display, and then the most checked out book itself. So I was just took it from the shelf. So I realized then why it was the most checked out book, because apparently it was one of the curriculum at Fukuoka International School for their language A book. So all students must read Republic by Plato. So I was really amazed that in high school they require all students to read this book. it can be implemented also in other schools. Okay, so that's the reason why I decided to do this book. So obviously, we know Plato, we know Aristotle, right? So I think if there's no need introduction. Actually, the content of this book is more about Plato was. So basically, this book was written after Aristotle already passed away. Actually. So that's why I had a lot of doubt in terms of there's a I don't know, certain percentage that this book was not entirely true. Basically. So Plato wrote about Republic based on the conversation that Aristotle did with all of his disciples all throughout his teaching career, basically in the ancient Greek era. So basically, this is based on memory, and also obviously Aristotle didn't get a chance to actually verify whether it's true or not. So basically, this is the summary of the thesis that Aristotle taught in his time. Yeah, so his disciple, one of them was Plato, and Plato made Aristotle one of the most venerated philosophers all throughout Europe. So they called the Big Five. I'm not sure what are the other four, but one of them is actually Aristotle. And the format of the book is in terms of conversation. So obviously this was translated from Greek to English, and the topics ranging from, for example, who gets to vote, for example, and then the conversation is so long, and sometimes if you are not really interested in philosophy, I think a lot of people will give up reading this book because it's very bertele-tele in bahasa. Just tell us the answer already, something like that. So the conversations between Aristotle's students are very long and also very slow in terms of the pace. So I think if you are not patient enough, a lot of people will try to skip. But in the end, it's also difficult to skip because there's no conclusion in every topic that Aristotle brought up. For example, when he thought about the question, suffering injustice is always better than inflicting it. Which one is, this is true or not? So for example, I'll ask all of you. If you are a person in the position that you can choose, which one do you choose? Do you choose to suffer injustice, or do you choose to inflict the injustice? Can you write in the chat box? Which one is better? You are suffering the injustice, or you're the one inflicting it? Which position is actually better?
Oh my God.
The chat box. It's a difficult question. This is only one of the questions that Aristotle brought up, but I'm curious about your response. Which one is better, suffering injustice or inflicting it?
Maybe becoming the victim is better than becoming the doer in this term too. Becoming the victim is also
Don't know juga ya.
yeah.
You suffering better ya Gusti daripada inflicting it ya.
Yeah. At least
Don't know as well.
not the one that becoming the villain in this case.
Yes. So this is only a lot of ethical questions that this book brought up. This is only one of them. And you know what's annoying? Aristotle never gives the actual answer.
Huh?
Never give the actual answer. Which one is better? Itu never give the actual answer. Always reading, questioning gitu kan. In the end, all of disciplesnya tuh always got angry. So never got the answer. Itu salah satu konteks. So another thing is, yeah, it is easier than that. Another thing is it better to release 99 guilty people than to punish one innocent. Which one is better?
Huh?
You release 99 guilty people, or you punish one innocent person? Which one is better?
Punish 99.
Yeah,
Punish 99.
99 guilty people, you release them,
Oh, release.
or
No.
release,
Oh, release ya, bukan punish ya.
or you have to choose. You punish one guilty, punish one innocent person.
Aduh.
Tega yang mana? Tega yang mana?
Waduh.
Release or punish, Gusti? Tapi tadi tidak spesifik.
Abstain nggak bisa, Mbak. Gak enak semua ya pilihannya.
Gak enak semua ya. Tapi in the end, when I follow the conversation between Aristotle and the disciples, although in the end, obviously Aristotle did not give the answer, but he somehow gave an impression that it's better to release 99 guilty rather than to punish one innocent person because of the ethical implication of it. So even with the previous question, itu juga he also said it's better to be the one suffering injustice than to be the one inflicting. However, it's my own conclusion. As I said earlier, he never gave a conclusion, always gantung. But the part that I really like about Republic is actually Plato's description of how Aristotle was. So if you want to read the Republic, I think you need to read Plato's reflection instead of the conversation. Okay, so the conversation is fun, it's boring, but it's also fun to just to know. But the actual this is actually Plato's reflection about Aristotle's teaching. For example, he said that Aristotle can make the obvious begin to look doubtful. So one of the benefits of going to Aristotle's class is there are so many things that we take for granted. We think it's the truth. That after having a conversation with Aristotle, suddenly the obvious begin to look doubtful. And then to a point where truth and falsehood appear to change places. Jadi in the end, so many incidents when the truth and falsehood appear to change places before and after talking to Aristotle. So I think that is very interesting. And then also dispelling clouds of illusion in order to discover the hidden reality, something like that. So I think all of this are what I can get from the book. Is maybe number one lesson is never take things for granted. So even things that we think is the truth or something, I think it's worth questioning. And then, oh, this is the last one. I also got this really good quote. People are always clouded with misjudgment. People are always clouded with misjudgment. Misjudgment can transform good people into enemies and evil people into friends. So our misjudgment can transform good people into enemies and evil people into friends. Jadi intinya hati-hati as human beings, because our judgment can totally cloud the reality that actually happens. Jadi orang yang baik malah jadi musuh, orang yang jahat itu bisa jadi teman because of our misjudgment. I think that's probably the most important lesson that I got. So anything that I disagree with is I actually I don't know whether never give answers to your students is a good thing or not. I try to do that in my class, but students usually are not patient. So to the end, once in a while, I think it's better if we also give the clarity to our students. Because Aristotle never give the right answer to the student. Always, in the end, up to you. In the end, you do the best. So I think he has to make exception once in a while to actually show what his opinion was. It started to look like he was afraid of being judged for his opinion because he never actually shared his opinion about a topic he brought up to himself. So he brought up a lot of topics. Who gets to vote, even about women treatment as well. But he never actually revealed his true opinion about all of those things. So it makes me feel like he was probably insecure about his own opinions atau takut opininya dibedah, being dissected by other people. So he never actually shared his true opinion about the topics he brought up himself. So that's probably not what I disagree with, but more like a weakness of Aristotle. And last one is, what is it? Words. Last one is
The wisdom.
the wisdom is it's the same thing that we should not take the truth for granted, and then we have to be aware of our misjudgment as well, and lead us to the wrong. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Pipi, for sharing. So, wow, those are difficult choices. Yeah, I am so surprised that Gusti and Donald, you were brave enough to make your choices. I'm still stuck in between. Even until now, I cannot make such a difficult decision on these two matters. For example, suffering or inflicting injustice. Maybe suffering has less sin than inflicting injustice. Releasing 99 or punishing one innocent. Here Donald says releasing, also Pipit does the same thing, but I choose differently. I would punish one innocent for the reason that these 99 guilty people, criminals, they could create chaotic world and they will kill the whole innocent people. So there will be no more innocent people on this world. So that's just my opinion. But Plato is a very smart guy, yeah. Because he's a student of Socrates. Socratic method is really well known in coaching business because
Sorry, I keep saying Aristotle, Socrates, sorry.
Yeah, the teacher is Socrates, yeah. So Socrates used to go to people and talk individually and asking a lot of questions that make them aware of themselves. So it's about self-knowledge because Socratic method is about gaining awareness of yourself. Instead of focusing on others, you need to focus within. And then he passed this theory to Plato, and Plato is the one who started the school, make this Socratic method become an academic. So that's Plato is also well known as a apostle. Yeah, so he is the same. However, when he passed away, his teaching is a little bit skewed by Aristotle because Aristotle changed the theosophy from the spiritual perspective of Socratic methods and Plato's academic school to the modern thinking that is believed as the root of the chaos in European world nowadays. Because I think the premise of Aristotle is I think, therefore I am, where it should be I am because not I am, therefore I think. We exist first because of God. That's why we can think. So that's how things change from Socrates to Plato and to Aristotle. I don't know if the allegory of the cave is in the Republic, Pipit. Is this in the Republic or not? The story of allegory
the
of the
allegory
cave.
of the cave is about seeing the shadow of the horse from the cave. It's in the book.
Could you share the story about allegory of the cave to the others?
So-
Because this is the main
so
idea
this-
of Platonic Republic.
So basically, there's no way we can know the truth because what we see is only the shadow of where we are heading in the cave. So there's no objectivity in how we see the world. So that's the allegory of the cave. Is
The allegory of the cave is a story about people who are locked in a cave, yeah, and they cannot see the sunlight because they are in a cave. However, one guy got to get out or just to see from the window, there is sunlight. And this guy explains the sun to the rest of the people who are locked in the cave. The lesson is this guy.
in the book it says explaining a horse, not the sun.
What is this? The fire? Or what is?
In the book, yes, the book, the guy was explaining the shape of a horse, not the
Of
sun.
a horse. Oh, okay, a horse. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So it's explaining not about the light, the sunlight. Okay, what the guy is trying to do is actually this guy is the one who is, we call it awakened, spiritually awakened or enlightened because he sees the truth. And the rest of his friends are still in the dark age, the darkness. So this guy is sharing his experience about the enlightenment or the spiritual awakening to the rest of the people. Because so it's about the horse, yeah, not the light, yeah. Okay, sorry about what he sees, but that's the very famous story of Plato, is the allegory of the cave. And also we've been, because I studied that before in my postgraduate study. However, about the Platonic love in America, when I took a study on love, we talk about Platonic love. Is that also available in the Republic, or is that idea of Platonic love in
Platonic
different
love
book?
is not in the Republic.
So it's different book, yeah, not from
What is
the
Platonic
Republic.
love?
Platonic love is the love between friends. It doesn't involve sexual love. It doesn't involve romantic love, but it's among close friends, among brothers and sisters. It's like a very, very friendly love. Yeah, there is no marriage, no commitment, something like that.
Why is it so significant in the philosophy?
That I don't know, but when I studied in my interpersonal communications about different kinds of love, we have different kinds of love. There is amorous love that is involving the sexual, sensual, the desire kind of love. That's and also there is a platonic love that is just pure friendly love, and there are other kinds of love actually in this world. And now we also learn about the language of love. But from the philosophy, I haven't learned about. That's why I'm asking: is this in this book? Because I need you to explain about this. So maybe we need to read another book.
I think Platonic love or something it's from Plato's own thinking, while Republic's actually from Caesar, so it's not about himself. So probably that's why it was not in the Republic.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll. I think Plato also mentions a quote about love. He says something that when somebody is in love, he is actually crazy, meaning that he doesn't think logically. Yeah, I quoted in one of my presentations for Toastmasters about love, and we talked about breath of love and we discussed about love. it was Plato who says that when somebody is falling in love, they become mad, they become crazy, they don't think with the head, they become illogical. That's why there's a phrase, love is blind. And I think because philosophers are supposed to be logical, Pipit, but when they fall in love, they cannot use their brain anymore. So I think that's why they call it like that. So you should stay in the platonic love zone when you want to become a philosopher. I think that's why. I think so. I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
Socrates, Plato, Aristotle never got married until they
Who never got married?
Never.
Who?
Oh,
Plato never got.
as well. Sorry, I keep mentioning Aristotle because it's Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They're like the order is 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So I got mixed up just now. I read it in April, so a little bit mixed up. So in the end, Aristotle was actually Aristotle again, kan? Aristotle. Okay, Socrates. In the end, Socrates was punished because he doubted the gods. The gods. So it's not like he hated gods. He said, I just don't like people glorifying them. Katanya kan. But that made a lot of people doubted about the gods. But the gods that time is totally Greek gods, not like what we know as religion now. So in the end, he was punished by the authority that time. And not burned at stake. I think he say what punishment he got, yeah, but he died from seen as the heretic person.
Oh, so Socrates was punished by gods because he didn't believe of them. That's okay. That's interesting. And who never got married? Was that Plato?
All of them. All of them. So yeah.
Don't become philosopher.
Oh, Aristotle never got married.
They're overthinking.
That a good wife can make you happy, but a bad wife will make you a philosopher. So by that quote, I thought Socrates has married, and his wife is terrible. Was terrible. He never married. Actually, I thought he was married.
He loves. They all love knowledge too much. Yeah, because love and knowledge. Yeah, they love thinking too much. They don't want to lose their logic. That's why they stay away from falling in love. Because when you fall in love, oh, your logic doesn't work anymore. Your rational mind. Gusti, you never fall in love? Oh, come on. Okay, thank you so much, Vivian. I think that's a very good
never fell in
book.
love.
Huh?
He used to like a guy, but that's it. He's like a guy he called, I don't know, Udat.
Bad romance. Bad romance.
There is no such thing as bad romance. You just have to experience love. That's why, just like Plato said, do not judge. Judgment is bad. There is such thing as bad or good. They just what they are. He is what he is. If this is the guy, just experience him and learn the wisdom from your experience. I think you're young. Yeah, you should fall in love. You should have broken heart, and that's what life is all about. Yeah, don't become philosophers. Be a lover.
You want other question? You can now. Table juga.
What, David? I'm losing you.
Sudah tuh jam 2.10.
Oh, okay.
Question.
Okay. All right, Gusti, now your turn to share the third book, which is Perjuangan.
Actually.
Oh, okay. You still have questions. Sorry. Go ahead.
But Pipit cannot answer question anymore, right? Pipit is moving here.
I can.
Oh, you can. Okay. Okay. So my take from the presentation is that it seems to me, because I see it pragmatically, it seems to me that they ask the wrong questions, because it gives the impression to me like they are people who have too much time and like to waste time with this kind of question. So in my opinion, the right question to ask is how to minimize or prevent those questions from being a problem in the first place. So for example, instead of asking, is it better to suffer injustice or to inflict injustice? The right question is how to prevent injustice in the first place. That is the right question, in my opinion. And second one is, do you prefer to release 99 guilty persons or punish one innocent persons? In my opinion, the right question is how to prevent the wrong people from being accused and vice versa. So I think that's the wrong question to ask. That is my opinion. Now I want to know Pipit's opinion about it, about my opinion.
Yes, I agree with you. A lot of these questions that Aristotle ya kan, kebanyakan bacain Aristotle kemarin. Socrates asked, it sounded very waste of time. Like they all day spending time talking about ethics, and all these are probable cases, yeah, not real case in the real world, probable case. That's why there's even a movement. Pragmatism, like Donald said, pragmatism is actually against type of philosophy. When people just talk about something but doesn't have real life application in the world, basically. So it's only good to know. Like for example, okay, so it's interesting to talk about, but more importantly, how are we going to implement this in real life? It's something that Socrates, even Plato, even Aristotle did it a little. But Socrates and Plato did not have any practical implications to implement this ethics in the world. So I agree with you that some of these questions are just fun to discuss, but if you focus more on the, so what are we gonna do if we know what the truth is, or if we know this is right or wrong? So yes, I agree with you. That's why it's really tough to read this book, because although it's only 158 pages, the one I read, it really felt like a waste of time almost. Like, why do I have to read all of this conversation? Just tell me the conclusion already, Adrian. It's totally boring. And then I guess going through the process is also important for me, because so I will be able to conclude that we should not take things for granted. And after we think about it, give it more time, then suddenly we can even change our own opinion about something. So there's never 100% certain about anything. Maybe that's the only thing I can get out of this.
Okay, thank you.
So did Pipit answer your questions, Donald? Okay, very good. Yeah. Don't become a philosopher, otherwise you will never get married like Socrates, Plato, or Aristotle. So you never fall in love. So the next one, Pipit, how long is the whole session for the book brewers? I'm sorry, I didn't ask earlier.
Until 3 is maximum.
Okay, so it's 2 hours the maximum, yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing about Plato. It's always been a great discussion when we talk about this philosopher. So now I'm giving the time and the floor to Gusti, who always found interesting Indonesian books. And this time is about Mayan, Perjuangan, dan Mimpi Gadis Kecil Miskin di Pedalaman Lira, ya?
Cina.
Untuk di pedalaman Cina, sorry, I cannot read my own writing. Untuk meraih pendidikan, and the author is Sani Kuncoro. So remember that you need to explain about the author first, Gusti. Who Sani Kuncoro is, her background or his background, and the synopsis, the review about the whole book, and what you enjoy from this book, what you disagree with the author, and the golden nuggets or the wisdom that you learn from this book.
Okay.
Okay, time is yours.
Yeah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So this book is actually the novelization of a true story. The real book is a diary written by Mayan, but then Sani Bikuncoro is hired by Bentang Pustaka to make a novelization based on the diary. I haven't read the real diary that has already translated by other publisher. I haven't borrowed that book from the library. I only read the novelization from the Sani Bikuncoro. So Sani Bikuncoro, I only found very few information about her. So not like other authors. Her information is so few. I just know that she also wrote some short stories and becoming the winner of many competitions, short writing competitions before publishing novels, and that she was a cancer survivor. I only know about that. But based on her writing from this book, I think her writing is what is it? Really good. Even though it is not from her experience, but she can bring me as the reader to feel like Mayan itself. So as if it is written by Mayan, not by her. So this book, just like the subtitle ya, Perjuangan Mimpi Gadis Kecil Miskin di Pedalaman Cina. So in China, in the regime of Mao Zedong, at the year of 1958 until 1962, he made like industrial revolution in his country, but he sacrificed many forests and trees to realize that industrial revolution. So to grow the industry of steel, he cut down many trees and then bring drought to those islands. And then this story took place in Ningxia, and that time it was the poorest district in China, because there was the decades of drought. The farmer there almost cannot grow any plants, so they live really in poverty. And the poverty is not just like poor, doesn't have money, but it's really poor, like, oh my God. If you feel your life is down, maybe you feel like your life is has a bad moments, you need to read this book, because you will think that your life is actually so luxurious compared to the life that is experienced by Mayan and her family. So Mayan's grandfather was sold by his parents with the payment of only 4 kilograms of rice and a fish of seeds. Just that little. The price of the soul of the child of the kid, and then after that sold it to the rich family and becoming the slave for the family. And then at the age of 20, the grandfather was sent to the war to replace the son of the rich family. So to protect his own son, the owner of this slave sacrificed the sacrifice his slave to replace his own son. And after that, but in the middle of the war, between Kuomintang, that is now becoming Taiwan, Kuomintang versus Mao Zedong, the grandparents of the grandfather of the Mayan changed side. So he then becoming the soldier of Mao Zedong, and then to win the war, but he only got so many, what is it? Not so many. So few prize as the veteran of the war. Only just got one donkey and then the medal, but not much money at all. So then he then married, and then his son married with a Mayan's mother, and then lives in poverty from generation to generation. And Mayan here wrote a diary when she was in 13 years old until 14 years old, from the year of 2000 until 2001. And then she had to menempuh jarak 20 kilometers just to reach her school. So her school is a dormitory, and then because the place is so far from her home, she had to walk for 20 kilometers with her brothers, and then they would face the risk of dealing with some robbers. So it's really dangerous just to go to school. And the most interesting part of this book is when Mayan had to eat rice without other food, so just white rice for more than 2 weeks just to buy a pen. So a pen, the price of one pen at that time is 2 yuan, and then her pocket money, her pocket money for 1 week is 1 yuan. And she got ransom from the school, just what rice. If she wants to buy vegetables sebagai lauk, she had to pay 1 yuan. But because she wanted to buy a pen, she keep her 1 yuan, and then just eat the rice, just eat the white rice for 1 week, and then she wait for the next week to go home, and then to receive her other 1 yuan. But then at that time his mother had no money at all, and so she had to be patient. Well, when she ate that rice, she had to imagine as if she had fried chicken, as if she had vegetables, just by imagination to eat that rice. But when she found that she wouldn't get 1 yuan at that week, she lost her ability to imagine. So she lost her appetite, and then after that, at the 3rd weeks, finally she got the other 1 yuan, and then she finally can buy the pen that she really wanted. And at that time, she once lost her pen, so like she couldn't find her pen, and she was like, oh my god, where's my pen? Because like for us pen is just like a simple thing. Lost one, we can buy one, but we can buy others. But for Mayan, one pen is means that holding hunger for 3 weeks. So it's really hard for her when she couldn't find that pen. And but I think after that she found that pen, but it's not focused in that story. And suddenly she faced other hard truth, that her family couldn't afford money for her school again anymore. So her mother said to her that you couldn't go to school, just let your brothers go to school. And Mayan said that, but I'm more diligent than my brothers, why should be me that leaving the school? And then Mayan said that for her, leaving the school is just like a death sentence for her. But then she then wrote a letter to her mother, and then read it to her mother about the letter, because her mother couldn't read at all. And then she read that letter, and then pouring all of her feeling to her mother, saying that please don't let me get out from the school, because if you let me get out from the school means that you will make me have a fate just like you, as a poor woman. And then her mother was crying, and then remembered that actually she promised to herself that she wouldn't make her children face the same fate to her. So after that, her mother looked for side job, harvesting plant named facai, that is can be eaten as a vegetable, facai. So but what is it? To go to harvest facai, she had to leave her home for 2 weeks, and then at that field there was no house for the workers, so they will sleep under the sky. So she sacrificed so big just to get some money to for Mayan. And one day the journalist from France, a group of journalists from France came to her village, Zhangjiansu, and then the journalist wanted to make a documentary about the life of the Muslim Hui at that village. And then the mother thought that those journalists were coming to her village to search for some smart children. So then she left her work, and then run back to her village, and then back those journalists by using Chinese language that those journalists didn't understand at all, begging them to go to her home to meet Mayan. But when those journalists followed her to back to her home, Mayan was not at home. So then he took Mayan's diary and Mayan's letter, and then Mayan's report, Mayan's school report, and then academic report, and then gave them to the journalists. The journalists that received the books named Pierre Husky, and at that time they couldn't read the Chinese writings on that book, right? But in Shanghai, then before going to French, Pierre Husky then find some way to translate the book, and then he was so touched by the book, like he had no imagination that there was one girl at a poor village in China that had to go 20 kilometers just to go to school, and that had to hold for hunger for 3 weeks just to buy a pen. And then after that, after he returned to his country, he published the Diary of Mayan, and it becoming an international sensation. It was published, and then it was translated into more than 19 language. And after that, he built a foundation to help Mayan to continue her study. The foundation named Children of Ningxia, and it's not only Mayan that was helped by the foundation, but also hundreds of children in her village helped by the foundation to continue their studies. And I found a news that at the year of 2020 and 2018, Mayan finally can go into university in Sorbonne, French. But I haven't I couldn't find any recent news about her. But Mayan said that she wanted to be a journalist like Pierre Husky, who had helped her, so she can help other children. But unfortunately, in 2013, the foundation Children of Ningxia was closed because there was no more fund for them to help more children. But today, the Diary of Mayan is still published, and then becoming like like buku bacaan at the school in China. And now China is already changed. There is a program wajib belajar 9 tahun that make the students can go to school for free. And then I found a video shown that Mayan poor school have been renovated into a good one, and that no more students feel hungry anymore, because the school also provide free food with not just rice, but also with vegetable, with meat, with other nutrition foods for the students. That's all. I don't disagree with the author at all. Education is important, and sometimes God, in the middle of hardship, God can give us like a turning point, like a surprising turning point that we never imagined. Like Mayan will never imagine that she can go to a university in France when she wrote that diary. And I feel like we have to be more grateful with our life, with what we get. Like the things that we could get easily for us in our daily life is actually really hard to get by the people outside. And maybe China is now becoming more prosperous, but there are still many countries that maybe the situation is still like Mayan, like Mayan, like they cannot go to school because of war, because of bad economic condition, and etc. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Gusti, what year was it when this happened?
Huh?
What year was this?
Kenapa? What? Sorry.
What year?
What
was
year?
it?
Wait.
Actually, you already mentioned 1959. I can answer it. So the story starts in 1959.
Tapi
ya.
kalau
So,
di cetakan pertamanya 2009 in Indonesia, the novelization
Yeah, but then
2009.
when this happened, what 1959 in Mao Zedong era then?
Oh no. Uh, the the this is the story took place in 2001 2000 until 2001, but the book said that what happened in the village of Mayan, like the long drought, is caused by the policy of Mao Zedong, that cutting many trees
Yeah.
to develop steel industrialization.
If it's 2000, that's when China decided to join World Trade Organization. So before they make the current progress that we see, that time there was still poor country. Started
Yeah.
to reach few
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
Gusti, I cannot see your face. I'm sorry. Can you move? Like, can you put something, a pillow on your butt so you could sit
Oh.
a little bit higher?
Kami tahu, Gusti never show her face.
sorry.
He is afraid of showing her face always.
Oh, you're so beautiful. You need to
She
show
wants to wear
your face
cadar.
more.
She even wants to wear cadar.
Oh, I used to wear hijab for 10 years.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before wearing hijab, I did not wear hijab. So there was a period I did not wear hijab. I wore hijab, and I'm no longer wearing it.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
it's a personal choice. You are evolving over time. You meet different people. You have different teachers. You surround yourself with different environment and values. And at the end, it is up to you who knows the truth about you. Nobody else knows. So
No.
only you know the
Actually,
best.
I just forget to position my camera.
Pipit, you said that she
But then
doesn't like
in social
her.
media,
But
in
yes,
social media,
social
Gusti
media,
always close
I
her face.
usually
Always
wear
close her face.
sunglasses or like here
Yeah.
because I protect
Okay.
my
Yeah,
full
almost in
face.
cadar Kak Mita.
Okay. Okay.
No veil. My cadar is
Such a masker, probably mask, not
yeah.
chadar. Yeah. Okay. So you always talked about interesting stories about young women, and you're a great storyteller, Gusti. Yeah. I mean, how old are you?
34.
34. You're young, you have good content to share, and the way you tell your stories are emotionally appealing, and the rhythm is slowly but steadily, so we can follow the story from beginning until the end with complete understanding. Everything goes in logical sequences, so it's a very good way of sharing your stories. And why did you choose this book, Gusti?
Well, I'm a teacher.
Okay.
Like some months ago, I feel like lost my motivation in teaching. So then I try to uplifting my mood by reading this book, and then I feel like, oh my God, I'm still lucky to that I can teach. I still have a work, something like that, because Mayan, compared to Mayan, her life is so hard that maybe I cannot face the same hardship as her. So then I feel like I want to share this story to my students, so I hope they will be more grateful with their lives, and be more like I hope it can motivate them to seek further and higher education, just like Mayan. Yeah.
Okay. This is so touching. I'm sorry, Donna. This woman sometimes can be hormonal and emotional. Remember the last time, it was a month ago, that I shared my book, The Miracles in You. You know what happened after, and it's because of Gusti sharing the story of that little girl who's like abused by her mom, who was handicapped, but she made it as a writer. So I finished my book. I went to a book writing rallies in Jakarta Escape, or Rumah Perubahan, that belongs to Professor Renald Kasali. And Prof. Renald Kasali signed my book. This is his signature. And after that, he pushed all of the writers to be confident, and I sold already 17 books after that. So my target is one book every day, and it has been 3 weeks, so it's not that bad. I took a break when I got tired. So for Gusti, this is because of you and my buyers. I'm exporting the book to America already. So I want to send one for you. So please give me your address so I can give this book as a token of my gratitude. Because of your story, I was inspired to finish my book, and now it's sold out, like 17 of them, and I'm going to keep printing because I already have like Steve Kosasi, the CEO of Taspen, waiting, and a lot of other people. And today's story actually is interesting because I was thinking about translating my book into French, because I can speak French. I took some French lessons in Institut Français, and because of your story again, I'm gonna do it. So my second version is in French, and I might want to apply a scholarship to Sorbonne, perhaps, to learn about creative writing. Perhaps with my book in French, they can take me and give me scholarship. I don't know. See, you're such an inspiration. You're a great teacher, a good storyteller, and you're my teacher. You're my hero. So never ever feel that being a teacher is like less than other professions. Actually, teaching is the most unappreciated job in the world, because you develop human beings. Characters are not comparable to money. Good characters are priceless. They're very valuable for the society. So keep teaching, keep sharing your stories with others, keep inspiring people like me, a woman who also still has doubt, has sometimes wants to give up in life too. So you're not alone. I feel that way too. Even I'm 50, but sometimes it goes up and down. So you encourage me, and now after this, I'm going to start translating this into the French version.
Really
And send me your address, yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yes,
Okay, I will send you the English version. This one is in English. Okay, thank you. Anyone has questions or comment, please?
Yeah,
I just
question.
want-
So yeah.
Go ahead, Donald.
So it talks about the poverty, right? From like buying the pen. Is there any other story? You said if you want to be grateful,
Well, this is
maybe from
actually
the family. So not from my own side, maybe from the family, or the father, or mother, or sister, or brother.
besides talking, besides taking the stories from the point of view of Mayan, the story also took the point of view from the mother side, like it portrays her mother feelings about like a perfect mother should make her family always so much always full, but as a mother, although she wanted to do that, she couldn't do it because of her poverty, and then she was so sad because of that. And but for Mayan, her mother is actually, what is it, like a strong woman that inspired inspired her because her sacrifice is so big. And this also there is also a story about when her mother when her mother got a mysterious stomachache, and it was so painful. And then there was a doctor coming to the village and said to the family that I can cure this disease, but pay me for 10 times. So I will come to your home 10 times and then I will cure it. But after he got the payment, he then gone with the wind. No more news. And then Mayan felt like, how come a doctor did something like this to her, to his patient? And then she said to herself that I wanted to be a police, so I would never never let a criminal free at this world, and then I would be a doctor that so I can cure other people. Then and she mentioned some other profession that if she can reach that dream, she will do her job her job honestly, not like that doctor. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Gusti. Back to the moderator.
My turn then.
Yeah, Pipit, your turn.
Okay. So did you say this book become a reading book in China?
Because I found a video showing many students in some school in China holding this book, holding the Diary of Mayan, not written by Sani B. Kunchoro, but the original book written by Mayan. They hold it and then they read it in class and in the library, and not just one student but many students.
That it's interesting if you say it like that, because Chinese government is very jaim, very jaim about property and everything. Still remember there are viral photos of kids who got his hair frozen, walking in the snow, going to school. You guys know that viral photo?
Nggak tahu.
A little boy walking to school and then his hair becomes frozen because he was walking in the snow to go to school. And then when that photo became viral, the government tried to hide it. Like intinya jangan disebarluaskan. Because they don't want to. In rural China, there are still a lot of problems. So if it's true that this book become bacaan sekolah, in my opinion, that's very contradicting to what the government of China usually allows. So I think that's so, but it's also amazing when you see the government now learn from that incident. So now they make all schools for free. So at least, but did you know whether the school for free was directly resulted from that story, or is it memang kebijakannya the government of China?
No, so the videos is just like what is it? The video only show the school of Mayan at that time and then compare it to the present condition, and then said that now the condition is already better than before. But I don't know if it is on it was only Chinese propaganda, I don't know, but the video said something like that. Yeah,
it's also interesting because we thought China is a communist country. So in a communist country, school is supposed to be for free since a long time ago. Jadi it's a little bit strange when the book talk about the family could not afford going to school. Because in China, the communist country is supposed to be the school for free.
well, maybe it's it did not reach the rural apa sih pedalaman itu apa rural area.
Yeah, rural.
It didn't reach the rural areas because they also talk about the book also talked about what is it, the big difference between in the big cities like Shanghai, that is many rich people, and then the condition in their village, that and like as a farmer they were like being looked down, and so like social discrimination, yeah, because they were poor, and then they were from they have no high education, they were like ditipu, mereka ditipu. So the father of Mayan worked as a buruh, ya, in some projects in other city, but he often ditipu itu apa sih? Dia
Pendok.
apa? Ditipu, ya pokoknya sering ditipu.
Pendok.
The salary never been paid full, or never been or didn't get any payment at all. Yeah, and the school because it is a dormitory, they had to like each student had to bring like some 20 kilos of rice. So their food ransom is actually from the rice that is brought by them. Yeah, rice, and I don't know
Okay,
how many
maybe
yuan.
because it was a dormitory. Maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't a government. Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if it's in a communist country, the school is supposed to be.
Yeah, and yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, it's in my time it's 10 minutes to 3 o'clock, and any other comments or question to Gusti? Or
Yang ini next time aja ya.
yeah, I think it's next time because it's gonna take like half hour for the sharing, the question and answer. You were gonna talk about that last month, maybe. What happened to that book? I don't think that synchronizes
Yeah.
with your.
Because that time my student was competing in a tournament. So they keep
Okay.
asking me questions, what to talk about this topic gitu. Jadi when you guys presenting, I wasn't even listening. I kept messaging them what to say about that topic.
Okay, so next time you will share that one for sure, yeah. But the Plato Republic is a great choice too. So excellent. I think everybody has done very good job today. Thank you. We have a very small group. So what I want to sum up from today's wisdom is that from Donald, we need to consider first degree and second degree consequences, never becoming overconfident in making decision. Take our time, yeah, and consider all aspects. Otherwise, you would be attacked just like the Emperor Khwarezmian by Genghis Khan. And from Pipit also, very good about Plato, the Republic, especially about do not judge. Yeah, never judge anything. Accept them everything as they are or as it is. And for Gusti, education is important. I think I cannot agree with you more, and keep sharing, keep storytelling, but do not overthink. Otherwise, you would never get married, just like Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato. Yeah, Vivit, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's the wisdom for today. Okay, so when's the next book brewers, Vivit?
Yeah, okay, thank you. I will stop the recording now.